Hey there, We Can't Wrestle Podcast listeners. If you haven't noticed, we have switched our server to Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Highly recommended by me and everybody else here at the We Can't Wrestle Podcast.
Oh yes, Danhausen here. Very nice, very evil, very famous. Here to tell you that you, hopefully, are listening to the We Can't Wrestle Podcast. Yes, it is a wonderful mix of wrestling history, discussion, and comedy. Yes, very good. Isn't that nice? Well, anyways, if you're not listening to it, how are you hearing Danhausen say this right now? But nevertheless, if you're not listening to the We Can't Wrestle Podcast, you're cursed.
You're listening to the We Can't Wrestle Podcast. Now it's time for our host, Nate Manson.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the We Can't Wrestle Podcast. Nate Maxon, your host, here with you, along with Mr. Archie Mitchell.
What's up?
And Mr. Technical Difficulties, Aaron Maxon.
Hey.
Aaron's having issues tonight, so we're going to try to keep him on the show. Before we start, just want to wish everybody, whatever you celebrate this week, whether you are celebrating Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Festivus, that's what I celebrate, the Festivus for the rest of us.
For the rest of us, that's right.
Yes, and now the airing of grievances. Want to wish you all a happy holiday, whatever you celebrate, and thank you for supporting the show and the WrestleNet Radio Podcast Network. And that being said, what we're going to be doing this week is we're going to be taking a trip down memory lane, as we usually do in this show. But we played last time with the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, I think from 92 was the year that we did the year-end awards. This year, this time around, we're going to go into the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter awards. It's easy for me to say. From 1995.
I did it.
Oh. Yes, you did. I'm taking your phone out of the studio, and we're good now. All right.
Okay, Jesus fucking Christ. Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Jesus fucking Christ. Merry Christmas. That's how we roll here on the We Can't Wrestle Podcast. That's fantastic.
Sorry.
That's all right.
No, it's perfect.
It was my Gilbert moment. Sorry.
The reason for the season. But yes, that's what we're doing, everybody. We're going through the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter awards from 1995. I'm going to give the categories, and the guys have come up with their guesses for who they think may have won said categories for 95. Obviously, I have the awards in front of me, so I'm not going to guess, but I will say who I think, my opinion of who that should have been that year. 95.
Some of you are going to get mad because we don't pick fucking some shit from Japan, but I didn't see shit from Japan in 1995.
Yeah, I didn't know what Japan was in 1995 for wrestling.
You knew we nuked it in World War II. That's about what we knew.
About it, I didn't see all of it.
No, and
it's
also
it's the Torch, so it's not going to be all Japan.
No, it's not the Observer. The other thing I want to say before we dig into it, 95 kind of gets panned by a lot of people, and I don't know if it's just because it was during my height of my youth watching pro wrestling or whatever, but I have many, and I know we've said it on the show before, but I have many, many fond memories of 95. I actually dig 1995. WCW's pretty rough with Hogan running roughshod. But I guess I'll say this: I really like the WWF in '95. Yes, the gimmicks and stuff were still around, but they had some really good wrestling.
The WWF was definitely at the top of the mountain still in '95. But if you could get past Hogan and the Dungeon of Doom, WCW still had some shining moments too.
Yeah, there was really good stuff in the undercard,
Right.
But yeah, you had to get past the very they say Vince Russo in WCW without the filter of Vince McMahon.
Right.
95 WCW is also almost Hulk Hogan without the filter of Vince McMahon. It's like,
right.
All right, Vince knew how to drew the fine line between the cartoony shit and the wrestling. And Hogan went full on, him and Sullivan went full on cartoon in 95 at some point.
And it almost seemed like they were trying to one-up each other with who could make it more outlandish and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we're going to get you in the Dungeon of Doom's dungeon area, and we're going to transport you there. What if I touch water and it's not hot, not cold?
Right.
Okay. What if you say there's no Hulkamaniac here? What if I face the Giant in a sumo truck match? What? They were smoking something back then.
Yeah. Welcome to What the Fuck is Going On Championship Wrestling, everybody.
Right.
All right, here we go. Let's dig into it. 1995, Pro Wrestling Torch. Who do you guys think the readers of the Torch voted as the MVP in pro wrestling of 1995?
Aaron, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll put who I like if I'm voting for it. In my opinion, the MVP of 1995 was Bret Hart.
That was also mine.
Choice. That's a good choice. I agree.
Let's see here. Number 3, Eddie Guerrero. Number two, Bret Hart. And number 1, Shawn Michaels.
Wow.
I mean, he did have a very strong year. He pulled Kevin Nash to a great main event at WrestleMania 11. He had that great match with Jarrett at that In Your House for the Intercontinental title. Him and Razor. I like the SummerSlam ladder match in 95 better than the WrestleMania 10 ladder match. So,
but Bret was fighting everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This wasn't just like, this wasn't Bret that we knew in 97 where everybody was trying to screw him and everybody was, this was a different Bret Hart. And it didn't matter whether it was Bob Backlund, 1, 2, 3 Kid, Hakushi, Jerry Lawler. Bret Hart was giving us 15 to 20, 30-minute matches with everybody.
Don't sleep on those matches with Jean-Pierre Lafitte either. Those are some,
that's what I'm saying.
Damn.
You know what I mean? This wasn't like a 10-minute match with somebody and he was beating them soundly. He was giving 25 and 30-minute matches with guys that looked like they might beat him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understand Shawn Michaels. Yes, I agree. 1A, 1B, definitely. But wow.
But yeah, I just think it's Bret. He, like Arch was saying, he didn't have any. I don't want to say it. He didn't have any problem working with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
And he wasn't like a pain in the ass or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about Shawn is you can say how great he is, and I think he's great and everything, but at the end of the day, some of the shit that he did and things like that, it's like he wasn't for the wrestling business. He was for the
Shawn Michaels business.
For himself, right?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we all kind of came to a consensus on that one. Then the MVP for 95, Bret Hart. Now, also, I will say I can see why Eddie came in third in the votes too, because he had a very strong 95. That was his first. I mean, yeah, ECW was where he really got noticed in the States first in like 94 and early 95, but in WCW, that was his first where people got to see Eddie Guerrero on a national stage and be like, God damn, this is a talented dude.
And he didn't hold back. Eddie went for a 5-star match every night.
Him and Benoit both.
Him, Benoit, Malenko. even Saturn, when he came into WCW, whether he was in the flock or not, those four really came in and were like, you know what? Paul gave us the go-ahead to do what we want in ECW. Bischoff don't give a crap what we're doing.
Right.
Let's just do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
All right, unless there's anything else on that, we'll move to the next category.
go ahead.
The best wrestler of 1995. I will go with my pick first.
Go ahead.
I think the best wrestler of 1995 was Bret Hart.
And I agree.
You know?
I'm chopped between, there were a lot of great wrestlers that year. Benoit, obviously, Guerrero again, Malenko, but they were only getting 5-6 minutes on, casually on Nitro or, a Saturday night. Bret was getting it every week on Monday Night Raw and on pay-per-view, so got to be Bret.
Bret was mine as well.
I think for kind of all the same reasons we just brought up with him being the MVP.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even make the top three in that category.
Well, that's horse shit.
Number 3 is Chris Benoit. Number 2 is Eddie Guerrero. And number 1 is Shawn Michaels.
Wow.
So Michaels definitely sweeping these first 2 big categories.
You get the feeling that maybe the torch were big Shawn Michaels fans in '95.
I think so. So I can see a case for all 3. But I like I said, I definitely go with Bret personally, my personal choice. But the top 3 I don't think is out of the realm of, where anything, it's nothing ludicrous, it's nothing where you say, bullshit,
I'd say there
it is though. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was just gonna say, I don't see anything wrong with the picks they had either, but I'd put them in that order after Bret.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. See, what I'm remembering, and we've all recently rewatched things and seen things again. 95 was it 94 was Bret's coming out year. 95 was Bret's defining year, in my opinion. It's when he started to show people this is why they put the company on my back when Hogan and Savage left and there was nobody else around. And you know what? He made the right argument because that's why they put it on his back.
And I think some of that came from. I mean, he didn't necessarily at that time he didn't have issues with Shawn at this time yet.
Nope.
He didn't have a big issue with the Clique, but I think what it was is it's one of those things where he is, if anything you can say about Bret Hart, he is at heart, he truly is a fan of the wrestling business.
Right. And
thinks he is the best. And I think you're right. I think the reason this was his defining year was because he's like Vince. He's best when he's swimming upstream, Right. He looked around and saw, Vince is pushing Diesel. Vince is pushing Shawn Michaels. Vince has forgotten about me. I'm going to show him. I'm going to show everybody why I'm better than these guys that Vince would rather push above me. So like you said, Archie, they handed him Bob Backlund. He got good shit out of Bob Backlund. They handed him Hakushi. He tore it up with Hakushi.
Right.
They handed him Dr. Isaac Yankem, DDS.
And he made him look like $1 million.
Yes.
If anybody could have gotten over an evil dentist gimmick, it was Bret Hart. Because Lawler and Yankem weren't doing it on their own.
Aaron, anything else on that one?
Nope, just the fact that, like I said, to me, what makes a great wrestler is being able to have a great match with anybody. And not being selfish. And
right.
And like I said, Shawn Michaels could have a great match with anybody, but he was fucking selfish.
Well, and that's the other thing I was going to say is although he definitely believes his own hype a lot, as far as in the ring goes, Bret Hart was really only selfish one time.
Yeah.
And it was Montreal. That was other than that, he may not have liked to have to job to Diesel or whatever, but you know what? He went out there and he gave fucking Kevin Nash. Yeah, he gave Kevin Nash the best matches of his career. made him look like $1 million.
At the end of the day, he'd state his case and then be like, well,
all right, then.
Let me say what I had to say, but Vince is signing my check. So, and that's
just a quick.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead, Aaron. Finish up. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's the difference between somebody that grew, and I'm not saying Shawn Michaels doesn't like professional wrestling or whatever, but that's the difference between somebody that grew up in the professional wrestling business and somebody that got into the professional wrestling business.
Right.
Because I guarantee that Stu was just like, hey there, he's at the end of the day, he's the paying the bills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Brett probably saw guys that Stu would say, this is what we're going to do, and be like, no. And then Stu was like, okay, go. Like, you can get out. And it was like, hey, I've seen it happen. At the end of the day, this is what the promotion wants. And it's not what's best for me. It's what's best for the company.
Right.
Well, what I was going to say, just to touch upon briefly, Brett says in a shoot interview that Shawn Michaels, Diesel, and Razor came up to him one night and said, we want you in the clique with us. And he said, well, what's the clique? And he said, well, it's us three and Sean Waltman, and we're going to bring in Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and us five are going to rule the wrestling business because we're going to control all the belts, and we're going to control who gets to be at the top with us. So one night I'll wrestle Razor, and Brett, you'll wrestle Diesel, and we'll let Sean and Hunter fight each other, and back and forth, and then we'll keep everybody else down. And when Brett heard that, now I don't know how true this is. Could just be Brett being a little bit bitter over all the animosity he had with Sean. But Brett said, but I don't want to hold anybody down. Why am I going to stop somebody from growing in this business and making a living in it if they're going to help me get better and themselves?
Right.
We said Jean-Pierre Lafitte. That guy was great as the Quebecers, but as that pirate gimmick, he wasn't that great. But when he was in the ring with Brett, they both got better. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Brett got to show off how he could do against the big guy, and Jean-Pierre got to show how he could do against a technical wrestler. So Brett, again, like Aaron said, like you said, wasn't about taking from the wrestling business. He was about giving back.
Mm-hmm.
So it just goes to show who was selfish and who wasn't.
Best heel of 1995.
Ooh. I'd have to. I mean, on my list, I have a couple of names here. And it's between, honestly, it's between Kevin Sullivan because of all he was doing with Hogan. And obviously the readers were going to be the ones voting.
Mm-hmm.
Flair because he was still a big antagonist in WCW. But then on the WWF side, I would say it was Shawn because at the ending of 94, 95, he was facing Diesel and was still a heel.
Right.
So it's between those three for me. But Shawn would probably be number one. But who am I? Who am I to know what's going on?
Aaron?
Mine's Ric Flair.
Okay. Any particular reason or just he was consistent?
He was consistent. And he's in how do I say it? He was just consistent, and he was like the best heel in WCW, and the WWF heel side was really,
I mean, you got Sid,
really weak. In 95, it's like, and I'm not disparaging anybody, but when you're going King Mabel in your main event, you're just like, the matches and everything were good, and that's the one, like you were saying. But like the heel side of the WWF in 1995 was really rough, especially at the beginning of it, like really bad.
I've expounded on this on the show before, so I won't beat a dead horse, but I will tell everybody why, just in case you've never heard me say it. My favorite heel in wrestling in 1995 was Cactus Jack. The anti-ECW promos are some of my favorite promos ever. And he was nuclear in that ECW arena. And
Uncle Eric and Papa Vince.
Yeah, he's my favorite heel of 95 is Cactus Jack.
You know what the funniest thing is?
Do you remember when he walked out with the WWF and W shirt?
Mm-hmm.
And Joey Styles like, what the fuck is that? They bleeped it out, and just like, wow.
But do you know what he said was the thing that got the biggest reaction?
What?
Was when he took off his shirt and he had the airbrushed Dungeon of Doom.
Yes.
Like airbrushed Kamala and Giant and Kevin Sullivan. He said that was the worst. People were fucking mad.
So let's see what the torch readers said. Number 3 is Cactus Jack.
All right.
Number 2 is Raven.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And number 1 is Ric Flair. So there you go. The only thing that I would say, the only misstep they made, because Flair was, even though, Hogan's obviously playing his politics and he's on top, it actually helped Flair, and I'll get off this in a second. It helped Flair, I think, being pushed down because he got to have a great feud with Savage and et cetera, et cetera. The only thing that happened with Ric Flair in 95 that was just a total never should have happened, they never should have had him versus Arn. That was a bad idea.
Well, in 94.
No, that was 95. Wasn't it? That was I think it was Fall Brawl 95.
Okay, you're right. I believe.
But it never should have happened, though. It was bad. Like, you would, on paper, I guess, and like fantasy booking, you're like, oh, that sounds cool. Break up Arn and Ric Flair and have them wrestle each other. And then it happened, and it was just like, no, that does not work.
These guys shouldn't be
95, I just looked it up.
Okay.
But no, I agree. I agree.
Took it all the way to December, but I was fine. Oh, sorry. I was going to say I took it all the way to almost the end of December, but I was wrong. One time.
You shouldn't have had them, but if you were going to have them feud, at least make it a more believable feud. Like, okay, they had the one match. Pillman got involved. Okay, go to Sting. Sting, will you be my partner? Yeah, but if you turn on me, I'm going to kill you. You'll be dead, 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 dead. And the very next night, what happens?
Yeah.
Turn on him.
Yes.
Like, we could have gotten a couple week build up to this.
Something.
You know what I mean? You know?
Best babyface of 1995.
Aaron, go ahead. You go first.
This guy's sweeping shit in 95. It's Bret Hart. Just saying, Bret Hart had a 95.
I'm going to say it's Shawn Michaels because the way this list is going, it's got to be Shawn Michaels.
Well, I agree with Aaron. I think that the best babyface of 95 was Bret Hart, but let's see what the torch readers said. Number 3, Sting.
Okay.
Number 2, Bret Hart.
Told you.
And number 1, Shawn Michaels.
Told you.
I mean, he did. I can see why, because he turned face in 95 and he was pretty fucking red hot, He was the guy coming up. And notice that nobody's voting for the WCW or the WWF champion in any of this.
Yeah.
No big wins for Hogan or Diesel in 95. But I agree. Like I said, I mean, I don't know how much we can beat this Bret Hart horse to death, but I agree with Aaron. I think it was Bret Hart, my personal opinion.
It should have been Bret. It should have been Bret. If it wasn't going to be Bret, then, I mean, who else was really that over as a face in 95?
Right.
Because Hogan and Savage were getting mixed reactions. So you really can't call them a face. And as you said, no one's giving it to the champions. Diesel was over, but not, like
Diesel suffered from the same thing that Roman Reigns suffered from. When he became a babyface and a champion,
right?
They changed him. They stopped letting him be what made him popular in the first place. Right. People wanted the tweener Diesel, the badass. They didn't want the smiling, sweater-wearing fucking Kevin Nash.
Shawn Michaels said the thing that caught his eye about Kevin Nash is that he reminded him of Andrew Dice Clay when he saw him as Vinny Vegas in WCW. Mm-hmm. Same thing. As a young kid, I said, hey, this guy's like Andrew Dice Clay.
Right.
And he had that mean streak, that real vicious-looking side. all of a sudden, when you made him turn on Sean, or Sean turned on him, he goes wild. He beats the entire Survivor Series team. He beats Backlund the next night in, 8 seconds or 18 seconds?
Yeah.
Wins the title, and now he's Bill Cosby. And not,
Yeah.
I drug you when we go out on a date, Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
You know, the wholesome Bill Cosby.
He's wholesome Bill Cosby and not hickory dickory dock. Yeah.
Right.
Little Miss Moffat sat on a tuffet, eating their curves and whey. Along came a spider that sat down beside her and said, "Hey, bitch,
Hey, what's in the bowl, bitch?" What was the best TV show of '95?
ECW.
I agree.
I agree. The Readers of the Torch, number 3, Monday Nitro.
Wow.
Number two, Monday Night Raw, and number 1, ECW. So that's kind of in agreement. I actually am surprised, or I don't know. I'm surprised Nitro, because it was new, didn't beat Raw just for the fresh, like the newness of it or whatever. But I guess you also did have Hulk Hogan doing the Phantom of the Opera mask and some goofy ass shit going on Nitro. So for all of its wonder of being a new program, it really did have some. And lest we forget the weekly "Whose Side is Lex Luger on" storyline.
Then he did he did set a newsletter on fire. So obviously they weren't going to like him then.
Yeah. All right, that was an easy
one. Hogan had a little brief time in '95 where he was trying to dig at the newsletters. Yeah, they were fucking with him, so he's like, "I'm gonna fuck back," and it's like, no,
it didn't work. This one's a little tougher. What was the match of the year for 1995?
This is where I was saying I don't know about Japan, so don't be mad at me, people.
There's no Japanese matches on here anyway.
Okay.
But there's one smart mark that listens to our show. It's Kawada versus Kabashi. No, we don't know about that. You know what I mean? We didn't know about that back then.
But for what I saw in 1995, and you guys are like, "Oh my God, here it is again!" It's Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog from In Your House 5.
Awesome match.
I love that.
I agree. There's an awesome match. I'm going to go with Bret Hart versus Diesel from the Royal Rumble.
And there you go. I'm going with Bret Hart versus Diesel at the Survivor Series.
Yes.
Now, my 1A is Shawn and Razor in the ladder match at SummerSlam. But I just really like the ladder match is fantastic. But I think I like the Bret Diesel match is good because it's a good match and the story's so good.
It told a story, right? It told such and that's a wholesome story at the same time. You know what I mean?
And Aaron brings up a fantastic match with Bulldog and Bret too, and that was so much different because at this time. Okay, first of all, at this time, you barely got juice in the WWF. There's juice all over the place in that match at that In Your House.
And I'll give you guys the Diesel Bret thing, and storyline wise, that was really cool. I was just kind of going off just match quality in general, and I'm not saying they had bad matches, but that one was cool because it kind of bookended their year.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like the Royal Rumble. Where at the Royal Rumble that was the one with the schmaz where everybody ran in.
Yes, and they had the match at the King of the Ring previously in '94.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm just talking about a calendar year of pay-per-views that bookended it because WWF didn't have a pay-per-view. Well, they did because In Your House. They didn't have like a major pay-per-view in December, so it was like the first major pay-per-view of the year was Bret and Diesel, and we didn't get a finish. The final match, it's like this calendar year, and now Bret has been the guy to take it off of Diesel.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was planned in their mind or if it just happened that way. But
what I will say to give Aaron his credit on the Bulldog Bret match, it was a total turnaround from their first match at Wembley Stadium in '92, because we went from that. We're a family. We're going to stay a family. We love each other, but we also are competitive. And we weren't quite sure if these two guys were going to beat the crap out of each other in the match and not ever talk again.
Mm-hmm.
to their match in '95 being, "I've always hated you, Bret," and Diana sitting there going, "Bret Hart has destroyed our family." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, talk about a total 180. You know?
Yeah. I've got the gifts for you, Bret, and they're full of pain and heartache. I've got the gifts.
Now, they should have tried to find the Bulldog's going to win, whether he wants to or not, kid again around this time and see what he says this time.
Bret's going to lose whether he wants to or not. All right, let's see what the torch reader said. 95, number 3. Was this just from a Nitro or was this on a pay-per-view? Eddie Guerrero versus Dean Malenko. Did they do Havoc? Was it Halloween Havoc or?
I'm not sure. I'm sure they wrestled on a pay-per-view at some point.
They wrestled like 5 times in '95.
And the way they have this listed here, they don't actually say like what. But anyway, number 2 is Shawn Michaels and Jeff Jarrett from In Your House.
Well, so Shawn's not going to be number 1 this time? Wow.
Well, probably.
And number 1, Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon in the ladder match
You're
at
joking.
SummerSlam.
Who did Bret piss off at the torch?
All right. Best feud of 1995. And actually this one's interesting. Go ahead, guys.
For me, it's the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Ric Flair.
Good feud. Very good feud.
It's honestly like I think I've said this before. WCW did Ric Flair and Randy Savage better than the WWF did.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely.
I was going to say the two things that they got, excuse me, better. I mean, they did things better later on, but with Hogan and Savage coming into WCW, they did Flair and Savage better, and initially they did Hogan and Flair better. Yeah. They did a great job of hyping that first match and hyping them. You know, this is the match of the century. It's the match we've never seen on pay-per-view, et cetera, et cetera. Now, later on, they fucking boned Flair and made him look like an idiot. But, yeah, you're right, Aaron. They definitely – and you know what? I think, Archie, what was your pick? Feud of the year?
I'm with Aaron on it being Savage and Flair because, again, what a total 180 from what WWF did. From I was with Miss Elizabeth before Randy was with her, and Randy being so pissed off that when we got to them in WCW, Flair wasn't even really talking about Liz because he had Woman at the time. But then Elizabeth turns and makes the feud so much better now because we're on a different level now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now Randy's fighting for something other than the title. You know, so yeah.
And I will
than anything else going on.
I will now unveil what I thought the feud of 1995 was. Look at my Randy Savage and Ric Flair. I tell you, so we're all in agreement there because I think what had a potential to be the feud of the year, but it got screwed up because of injuries, timing, just shit that happened for some reason. I think that the potential feud of the year could have been Shawn and Sid. Because coming out of WrestleMania and that angle that they did and everything, and then they just kind of morphed it instead into Diesel and Sid.
Right.
But I think that from the outset that had the potential to be really good, but it just never, it wound up being the one where Eric Bischoff got to say, well, Shawn Michaels beat Sid in the YMCA. It didn't ever amount to much really until later on down the line in like 96. But anyway, let's see what the torch readers said. Number 3, Public Enemy and the Gangstas.
Okay.
Number 2, Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero.
Definitely. That feud spanned 3 companies.
And I also think that one's more based less on the story and more on the matches. Yeah.
Right.
And then number 1, And when I say this, you guys are going to go, fuck, you're probably right. Raven and Dreamer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but here's where I'll make an argument. And maybe you guys are going to say I'm wrong. Not many people had the channels to watch ECW back then. So,
Right.
you know what I mean? This was
But-
probably
but-
based on...
But I will
whatever
counter
they were,
that.
You know.
I will counter that with most people who read dirt sheets probably did, though. Probably,
Right.
trading tapes and getting their hands on it any way they
Right.
could. So that was
Look,
the...
I think that was a great feud. It lasted forever. And they always kept it fresh. They were
And it was
always in hatred with one another, you know what I mean? But
yeah, and also 75% of everything on ECW television spawned or revolved around that feud. It was spawned from... or
It was the nucleus of ECW.
Yeah.
oh, without that.
Best pay-per-view of 95.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I was on the fence with this because there's a pay-per-view that a lot of people deadpan, and it's because of the main event. And it's actually, until you get to the main event, it's actually a pretty good show. It's like SummerSlam 95 is a pretty good pay-per-view.
That's actually my pick, too.
It's not my pick, though.
Oh, okay.
And I said this is the only thing on the list where I was conflicted. And the reason I didn't pick it is because of Diesel and Mabel. Like, I can't bring myself to do it because of that. So I went with the 95 Royal Rumble.
Which is also really good. But yeah, SummerSlam 95. If I watch it, I don't watch Diesel. I cut it off. That's not my main event. But yeah, I really dig that pay-per-view. It had a really good undercard, like an odd undercard.
Yeah.
It was like going back to the old WrestleManias where you just throw some matches together.
Right, but
Hakushi and X-Pac, or 1, 2, 3 kid at the time, fucking light it up at the beginning.
Hell, the Guns and the Blue Brothers have a good tag match.
Bob Holly and Triple H have a pretty good match. Brett and Isaac Yankem. It's a good show.
I'm with Aaron on Survivor. You said Survivor Series, didn't you, Aaron?
No, it said Royal Rumble 95.
Royal Rumble. I'm with Aaron on Royal Rumble. I have SummerSlam as well here, but and it's not even so much as Mabel versus Diesel. There was some great undercard matches, but Royal Rumble was just better put together.
The Torch Reader said number 3 was the Survivor Series. Number 2 was Starrcade, which that was the one with all the Japanese guys on it.
Yeah.
Right.
And number 1 was SummerSlam.
Right.
So there you go. All right.
If you got a booty main event,
95.
I can't vote for you. If it's the whole best pay-per-view and there's a booty main event, I can't do it.
So now we go into our next category here, and it is Rising Star of 1995.
Wait, you mean Shawn Michaels might not have a chance of winning an award?
Yeah, I don't think he'll win this one. My pick was Eddie Guerrero.
I would go with Eddie too. I mean, they were really giving him the ball here early on to have as best of a match as he could with anybody, and he was.
My pick, and I agree with you guys that Eddie had a good 95 and everything, but my pick is Chris Benoit. And the reason is because Eddie was doing cool shit and everything, but Benoit was getting put in the Horsemen, and Benoit was you know what I mean? Like they weren't doing anything with Eddie. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't want to be like they weren't doing anything with him. I'm saying like he wasn't getting the when they put you in the Horsemen and they put you with Flair and Arn and that strap, that's them saying you're good. We're strapping the rocket ship to you here. You know what I mean? Because other than Roma, I mean, what other fucking shitbird did they ever put in the Horsemen? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So that's why. But he wasn't a shitbird. He wasn't as big as
a Horseman. He was not a horseman.
I disagree. I think that he was perfect for the role that he was put in the Horseman.
As a manager, yes, but not as a wrestler.
But for me, it was Benoit in 95.
The Torch Readers voted, and they voted number 3, Mikey Whipwreck.
Okay.
All right.
Number 2, Eddie Guerrero.
Okay.
And number 1, Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Oh, you mean Shawn Michaels Jr.?
At this time, he was more like William Regal Jr.
Right, but still, best friends with Shawn. Yeah, this was definitely they definitely had a bone to pick with anybody else besides the Clique.
Career tailspin of 95. Now, I want to express my opinion, and I don't think, let me look here. My guy's not in the list, but I think the career tailspin of 95, through no fault of his own, is Vader. Because Hogan came in and
scared of him. He might hit me too hard. I'm scared of him.
Things just, again, like I said, that's why I'm reiterating. It's through no fault of his own, but Vader, with Hogan and all Duggan and all the former WWF guys coming in, he just, before they showed up, he was the diamond, and you know what I mean? And in WCW, and then those guys come in and he's jobbing to Duggan and he's jobbing to Hogan, and just Vader's my opinion. But
where was somebody on the WCW roster like a Ric Flair to go, I've lost to Vader. Rick Rude lost to Vader. Sting lost to Vader. But Hogan and Savage aren't going to lose to Vader. You know
right.
What I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, but for me,
honestly, I'm not, it's knock you or anything like that, but Randy Savage would have lost to Vader because Randy Savage is like
not when he was on a team with Hogan, though.
Well, I'm not talking about a team. I'm talking like singles. Like Randy, if they would have said, "Hey, we want you to go put over Leon," he'd be like, "All right,
without doubt."
Because Randy's like Brett. Randy isn't about the Randy business. Randy's about the wrestling business. He would have done it. But all them other schmucks, they wouldn't have done it. And I'm sure, maybe Jim Duggan was like, "Sure, I'll put him over," and Hogan probably pulled him aside, but like, listen, brother, that ain't gonna work. Yeah. And then Duggan's like, "Oh, okay."
And I don't want to harp on it anymore, other than just to say this: it's also one of the biggest miscalculations of Hogan's career, putting his political thing over doing what he did with Vader, because essentially, to me, the way Hogan booked his feud with Vader left money on the table.
Yeah.
Well,
he didn't want to work with him that much because he didn't want to get hurt. It's the same thing with Rick Rude. That's why Rick Rude said, "Fuck it, I'm out." Because Hogan wasn't going to work with Rude because, honestly, Hogan pissed Rude off in the WWF and fucking knew.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in WWF anymore, and if this guy wants to give me a fucking uppercut, like he was in a company where you can't get fired.
Yeah,
you can get told to go home, but they're still going to get paid.
Right.
So Rude could have been like, "Look, I'm not going to get anywhere with this guy anyway. So if I want to fucking stiff him, I'll stiff him." And then they were like, I can't believe you did that. Go home. Okay.
Right.
So get fine
because you can't fire him.
Bye, Felicia.
Yeah.
For me, career tailspin, and it's not, again, through no fault of his own, Steve Austin. Because everything that was going on, Ringmaster, the little time in ECW, he was trying to redefine himself, yes, but it still took him a year or so, 2 years, to jump up and actually get somebody to take notice. Hey, I know what I'm doing with my career.
Right.
You know what I mean? And finally get somebody to listen. And thank God JR was there to listen. Because without JR, guys like Austin and Mick Foley would not have gotten the chance to do what they wanted in WWF.
Mm-hmm.
So I go with Austin.
Mine is Bam Bam Bigelow.
Really?
Yeah. It's like you go like tell me another guy that like main evented a WrestleMania like that and was like the big match and got in the thing with the star out of the business or whatever, and then afterwards just
and I mean
and it's kind of like Vader was of no fault of his own.
Right.
Bammer got in there and then started getting a push when the Click got in there and they didn't fucking like him. So they just squashed him.
They undercut him, yeah.
And they undercut him and they didn't do anything with him. Like he went from being possibly getting the biggest push of his career to just nothing.
Yeah, he's he starts the year off feuding with LT, going into WrestleMania to literally main event WrestleMania. And by the time the year's over,
and gets a goddamn good match out of a guy that's never had a wrestling match.
Yeah,
I know Patterson taught him and everything like that, but Bammer got a hell of a fucking match at LT.
Yeah, and by the end of the year, he is jobbing to Gold Dust at Survivor Series, and then he's gone.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But he left and went to ECW, won a couple pieces of gold, went to WCW, and yeah, the hardcore division there was pretty crappy. But I like just working the New Jersey Triad with DDP and Canyon. You know what I mean? I thought that worked pretty well. So, I mean, thank God he didn't, like, Vader went from WCW to the WWF, and then they fumbled the ball with him there even worse. Bam Bam at least tried to rebound and did something with his career afterwards.
Well, I know, but in 1995, that shit bottomed
No,
out.
you're right. I agree.
Like, really quick.
No, I know.
So the readers of the Pro Wrestling Torch said number 3, Bam Bam Bigelow. Number 2, Hulk Hogan.
Wow.
And number 1, and I can see this one too, with all the fanfare and everything from the beginning. And this one might even be more accurate than Bigelow. It's Shane Douglas. Because he comes into the WWF in August, and he is gone by December.
Hey, get the fuck out of here.
I mean, he came in with a lot of fanfare and bravado, and again, it's politics. It's the Click. But, yeah, I mean...
Honestly, it was the Click, but even if the Click was like, yeah, he's all right, he was getting nowhere with that fucking gimmick.
Look,
No.
you both know what kind of Shane Douglas mark I am. I am literally, if I met Shane Douglas in person, I would Wayne Campbell out and be like, I'm not worthy. I love Shane Douglas. He basically was getting rat-holed the minute he got into that company. Mm-hmm. That gimmick was piss poor. No one has ever made it with a teacher gimmick in the WWF or WWE.
Right.
Christopher Nowinski, Matt Stryker might have made it slightly because he was a manager, but as a wrestler, he was horrible as being a teacher gimmick. We got a guy in NXT now called Andre Chase who's doing it too. It's bullshit. But then the Click, and I recall Shane saying during a shoot interview that on his last night with the company, because he was in Madison Square Garden, he couldn't wrestle because he blew out his back. Vince went to him and said, well, since you're going out anyway, go out and cut a promo to the fans and give us one of those franchise promos I've been hearing about. Why didn't you let him do it for the 8 months he was there, Vince?
Right. Yeah.
Why didn't you let him come out on TV in street clothes on his first night and call out Shawn Michaels like he was doing in ECW?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or call out Flair or Hogan and let him actually be Shane Douglas. Why did he have to be Dean Douglas?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
So it was by no fault of his own. Yeah, Shane definitely got screwed in WWF.
All right, 1995 Tag Team of the Year. Aaron, how about you start us out?
Harlem Heat.
Very good choice.
If you look at the tag teams, like there's good tag teams all across 95, but some of them got weak or whatever. Mm-hmm. But as the package deal, like them with Sherry and the fucking entrance and the tights and the and everything, just as the complete package. And honestly, Stevie Ray gets some static sometimes for not being that great, but he wasn't super great as a singles. But when he was in he was passable as a singles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna want to knock the guy either, but I would compare Stevie Ray as a singles wrestler to Billy Gunn. You know what I mean?
I'd agree. Maybe even a Jim Neidhart.
He's big. He's impressive looking, but he ain't gonna do anything that you go home and be like, God damn, that Stevie Ray match,
Right?
That was amazing. But you're also not gonna go home and be like, man, that Stevie Ray match was dog shit.
Stunk up the joint. Yeah.
but as a tag team, fucking Harlem Heat in '95, I think they were the best tag team in '95, in my opinion. They're having the best consistent matches.
What do you think, Archie?
I'm going to go with Rick and Scott Steiner. I mean, 95, 96, they were putting on some great matches, some great promos, and, 96, 97, obviously they were with the Outsiders most of that time.
Mm-hmm.
But in 95, them and Harlem Heat had some of the best matches I've ever seen.
I actually, my pick, I had a hard time, and it's for two different reasons.
Hard times, baby.
Hard times, baby. Putting hard times on my family.
I'm having hard times finding an Orange Julius in this mall.
I have a kind of a tie, and it's kind of for two different reasons. Harlem Heat, yes, they were. I have them here because just in general they were having great matches. They were doing great shit, and they were fantastic. I also, though, and it's just because I am for all their faults, I am a mark for this team because of how different they were and the spectacle that they created, and it's the Gangstas. I am a big fan of them.
Good team.
Very good people can say what they want about New Jack. New Jack entertains me. Mustafa being the crazy motherfucker entertains me. I'm a fan of the Gangstas. So for me, it's kind of a tie between Harlem Heat and the Gangstas for '95.
And I'm not gonna say anything bad about the Gangstas either, but I was kind of looking at, I don't want to say
match quality.
Yeah, match quality.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said for the Gangstas, for me, it's more of the personality and the spectacle and the gimmick. And I mean, they just were fucking amazing. It's so fun to watch.
Harlem Heat and then the Gangstas. Harlem Heat was like, we want you to go out there and perspective is reality. And they're not going to like you guys because you're big black dudes with a white chick. You know what I mean? But don't talk about it.
Right? Yeah.
Don't bring up the race thing, but these people aren't going to like you because you're in the South and you're African American. Harlem Heat could have been the Gangstas,
right?
And in corporate Turner Broadcasting, like they could have come out there and been like, "Where the white women at?" Oh, and right. You know what I mean? But they couldn't. Yeah. They couldn't say it, but they could imply it.
Yeah.
Whereas the Gangstas. We're just like, fuck it. We'll say whatever the fuck we want.
They certainly do.
And in the meantime, we'll staple a dollar bill to your head.
Yeah.
They certainly knew where one of the white women were at all times. So Jerry was at their hip. So.
The readers of the torch say number 3, the Smoking Guns.
Yeah.
And number 2, Harlem Heat. And the number 1 team voted by the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter readers in 1995. Aaron's going to.
It's Shawn Michaels and Diesel.
No.
I'm leaving Shawn Michaels and Diesel.
Aaron might react to this even more volatilely. The Public Enemy.
Oh! What the fuck were they even really doing in 95? They got beat by the Gangstas. They went to WCW. I mean, like, what the fuck? Jesus. I might have rather than be Shawn Michaels and Diesel.
I just love that both of you at the same time are like, ugh.
Yeah.
No way. The fucking Nasty Boys in 95 were better than Public Enemy.
You want to know the truth? It's not even so much Rocco Rockets, it's Johnny Grunge. You know what I mean? Because Rocco, at least, I don't know, he was a little entertaining at times, But Johnny Grunge was just like, I don't know, a sack of skin.
A meat sack,
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
95. Best promos. I already answered this one for my pick earlier with Cactus Jack.
I agree with you.
Mine's Raven.
I go with
Solid.
Cactus with name.
So let's see what the readers of the Torch said. Best promos. Number 3, Ric Flair.
All right.
Of course.
Number 2, Shawn Michaels. No.
I like babyface Shawn Michaels in the ring, but I hate babyface Shawn Michaels promos.
I agree. Too much ass sucking.
This guy shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when he's in the ring and he's a babyface, it's fine. And it's also great when he's in the ring and he's a babyface because he's being in the ring and nobody can tell him what to do in the ring. So he's kind of an asshole when he's in the ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even when babyface Shawn was in the ring, he was still doing and I said it was detrimental to him being like the best wrestler or whatever. I want to preface that by saying when Shawn Michaels went into business for himself, it was fucking entertaining. And I love it. But then I look at it, I'm like, yeah, he didn't do anybody any favors. Like, there's that fucking Raw when Jimmy Del Rey dances at him, and then like Shawn just looks at him, puts his fucking hand on his nose, like, ooh, this guy stinks.
This guy stinks.
Yeah, this stinks.
And then the Torch readers, number 1 for best promos of 95, Cactus Jack.
Of course.
So yeah, why Shawn's there and Raven isn't, I really don't know.
I don't know.
Worst promos of 95.
Damn.
I have
caught
to
up with this one.
Worst promo in 1995.
Yeah. I know it's tough.
It is tough. It's pretty rough.
I would say for me, just if I'm picking, I'm actually picking this one out of the air. I would say probably Mabel.
That's a close one.
Yeah, Mabel.
Although no, I'm looking at the Torch thing, and they might be they might be right. Maybe I'll agree with.
Yeah.
But,
read us off the Torch because I like I said, I was
right.
really stuck on this one.
The
Do you
Torch
agree
says,
with that, Aaron?
I don't remember any promos he said, but I'm just gonna say, fucking the Butcher.
okay.
Yeah,
I think this was the year of yes, no, yes,
Yes.
no. So you
No.
might be,
Okay, well there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
worst
Yeah.
promo, the fucking Zodiac.
for the Torch readers, I actually don't agree with the number 1, but we'll get to that. Number 3 is Alex Wright.
You barely understood what he was saying, though. Like, was that why he was the worst promo? Because he couldn't understand what he was talking about?
Number 2 is the Renegade.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to
And
change
number-
my vote. I agree with it.
And number 1, I disagree with this because as much as we talked about earlier about how hokey and shit he was in 95, Hulk Hogan is not ever a bad promo, but
Right.
he was number 1. So I think that's more of the Smarkies.
Yeah, that was just people really
You know.
hating him in 95
Yeah.
and wanting to give it to
Because-
him.
They're just jacking themselves off. with
Yeah,
that.
you can say what, I'll say what I want. You can say what you want about how goofy it is with Hogan in the Dungeon of Doom and all the hokey shit they did and blah, blah, blah. But Hogan was never a bad promo, you know?
No. He made the stupidity work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. The next one is most underutilized. And I say, Archie, you might agree. I don't know. Based on what we were talking about earlier with the stupid teacher gimmick, most underutilized was Shane Douglas, because if you would have brought him into the WWF as Shane Douglas, and obviously it's WWF, they're not going to call him the franchise, but come up with some other nickname for him and let him be Shane Douglas.
Why not, though? See, that's the argument I always had. He wasn't their franchise, but he was the franchise.
Right.
There are guys who go to football teams from other teams and like, I was the captain on the Rams. And the coach is like, but you're not our captain yet. You know what I mean? So give him a chance. We all knew Shane going to the WWF was not going to lead him to the world title.
But it could have.
But it could have led him to getting a shot at the world title when Shawn finally got the belt, or when Bret had the belt, or even against Diesel. You know what I mean? And the thing that I'm going to say this, and I mean it, Shawn, Diesel, Scott Hall, and Hulk Hogan never learned, is that even through your politicking, if you have real life hostility with someone, you can make it work on the back end in a wrestling promo.
Oh, yeah.
And
Dusty and Flair did it all the time.
Why were some of Bret and Shawn's best promos at the last days the best? Because they were real. When Shawn said Bret had sunny days, everybody went, ooh, is that real?
And my thing about Shane has always been, by probably about 98, 99, I thought that his shtick got old and tired.
Well,
the Dick Flair stuff and all that stuff. Right. But at this time, from 93 through 96,
right,
man, if they would have capitalized on his talent at that time, on the mic and in the ring. So that's why I say he's most underutilized, 95.
Definitely.
Aaron?
Mine's more outside the box because the guy was everywhere, but I don't think they used him in the way they should have used him. And it's Owen Hart.
Owen Hart was, I'll go from 1989 to his death. Owen Hart, decade of underutilized. Let's be honest,
Even when
he should have been a world champion at some point.
Yeah.
Even when he had one of the belts on his waist, it was like he was still overshadowed by Bret and Bulldog.
And like I said, I know that he was everywhere and he was like on the In Your Houses and shit like that. But I like him and Yoko as a team and everything like that. But it's like Owen should be doing more than just teaming with Yoko as the tag team champion.
Yeah.
And I just think that in 95, they cooled him off too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in 94, he was the shit. In 94, he was the biggest heel in the fucking business. And then they just chilled him in 95. And I think it hurt his trajectory towards being at the top of the card, in my opinion.
I agree.
And you know what never made sense to me about Owen? No one ever found out why Vince was not serious about pushing him, because we all know Bret would have let Owen get pushed over him. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like if Vince would have came to Bret and said, "Okay, we're putting the belt on Owen tonight. You're gonna lose to Owen." But yes, let's do it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there were plenty of guys in that locker room that were like, "Yeah, Owen's the man. Go for it." You know what I mean?
I honest to God think I know why Vince McMahon never pulled the trigger on Owen. Because Owen Hart was not willing to sacrifice his family and give everything to the WWF.
But he still gave everything to the WWF. He was there every night. He still gave everything. He was there every night. He didn't get injured often.
Archie, what I'm saying is, if everything I've ever heard about Owen is true, and
I agree
sure
with you on that. Yes.
My thing is with how you hear about Owen with his family and shit,
right?
And everybody, I've heard multiple people say this, even people in his family, saying that Owen had an exit strategy for wrestling where he was cheap on the road,
right?
Like he would buy like bologna and ramen noodles and shit like that, and save every dime that he made. Because his exit strategy was to be out of the professional wrestling business when he hit 40. Where he could just be done.
That's fine, yeah.
And that's fine. And what I'm saying is that's why I don't think Vince wanted to do it, because I know I talked about like, oh, Bret's a great guy, but if like Bret Hart's wife would have called him and said, if you don't leave the road, if you don't leave the WWF, I'm out. I'm done. Bret Hart would have been like, sorry, see ya. If Kevin Nash's wife would have called him and said, if you don't come off the road, if you don't quit, I'm done. I'm leaving. Kevin Nash would have been like, that sucks, babe, but have a good life. Shawn Michaels would have said the same thing. If Martha Hart would have called Owen Hart and said, Owen, I need you home. I just need you to have a regular life so you can be here to be with your kids.
Oh, without a doubt.
Owen would have said, fuck it, I'm out, Vince. And I think, God, that is why, because Owen Hart was not willing to be the guy to take a fucking phone call from Vince McMahon at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, get on a plane and fly to Connecticut. We need to talk. Owen would have been like, no, I got a soccer game tomorrow. And that's why they never did it.
So he looked at him as possibly unreliable.
And I don't want to say unreliable because Owen's a reliable person.
No, unreliable in the way of putting his heart beneath the ring. You know.
Yeah, but behind the like all those other guys put the company before their family. Owen put his family before the company. Like Owen didn't look at what.
I wish we wouldn't have gotten into this conversation while I'm 6 beers deep. You know what really fucking sucks?
Lay it on us.
Aaron just told us why they never got behind Owen. He wouldn't give up his family and his life at home for the business, and he died in that fucking ring.
Yeah, that's
God damn it.
That's what I mean. He got injured. He still wrestled. He needed a day off.
He literally died in that fucking ring. God, that's like the worst kind of poetry. You know, Jesus. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be a Debbie Downer there, but it just.
But Nate, tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're not. And that's what I'm saying. That's what's the most heartbreaking. And I'm not saying that anybody dying in the ring isn't heartbreaking, but that's what the most heartbreaking thing. The family guy died in that, as Bret says, we're like cattle. He died in the fucking, on the ranch, in the fucking cage, instead of dying at home with his family. And it's really fucking sad. It's so sad.
I mean it to be that way. That's just what I'm.
No, I agree.
I wasn't trying to make this the Owen. Yeah, I'm not trying to make this the Owen Hart tragedy story because
I know
talked about it all the time.
But
like I said, I'm not Vince McMahon. I don't know Vince McMahon. I'll never know him. But I honestly God think that's why they never did more than what they did with him because Owen, like I said, Owen would probably have worked out any contract that he had. But I guarantee if Martha would have called him and said, Owen, I want you to come home, Owen probably would have said, look.
My contract's another 8 months.
I have 9 months of my contract. I told these people I'd be here for 9 months, and that's what I'm going to do. And in 9 months, I'll come home, and I'll fucking firefight. Because that's what he wanted to be, was a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason he got in the fucking wrestling business was because Stampede was fucking hurting, and he wanted to help his family. And that's the only fucking reason he got into wrestling. He didn't want to be a wrestler. He wanted to fucking be a fireman and just stay home.
Mm-hmm.
He got in the fucking wrestling business because his dad asked him to, and he's fucking loyal to his family. And he didn't have kids at that time, so his dad was his family. So he got in the family fucking business to support his family. And like I said, if his wife would have told him to come home, he would have fucking went home. And Vince knew that shit.
This is what pisses me off more about because of how right Aaron is. But how big of an asshole Vince McMahon is. Look how loyal Owen actually was to Vince. Bret, Davey, and Jim take off after the screw job. And Owen stuck around. Where was your train of thought to say, that's my next WWE champion?
Yeah.
You know?
What the Torch said, the Torch readers said in this category.
Yeah, we're talking about awards, that's right.
Most underutilized, number 3, Shane Douglas. Number 2, Skip, Chris Candido.
That's a good one.
Okay.
And number 1, Al Snow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I honestly forgot about Al Snow in
I'm
'95.
just like, something.
That was when he did, what was the Mortal
Shinobi.
Kombat gimmick thing?
He did Shinobi.
Shinobi.
Avatar.
And he did Avatar
Avatar,
too, but he did Shinobi and accidentally fell off the ropes.
No, that was as Avatar.
No, it was Shinobi.
He fell off
Because
during both gimmicks.
he fell off the ropes of Shinobi when he debuted, and at first he was just supposed to be Shinobi the Black Ninja, and when he accidentally fell, since it was on TV, they just told him he was going to be a clumsy ninja.
You're a clumsy ninja.
So they got rid of that, and then they made him Avatar, and Avatar was terrible. They just let Al be Al, and they should have just let Chris be Chris. I know they didn't want to call him Chris Candido or whatever, but just let him be Chris.
Yeah.
Like let him be the little shit heel, like the little cocky little guy that everybody looks at the crowd, like everybody in the crowd looks at and goes, I'm a fucking foot and a half taller than this guy. He's like looking up at people being like, fuck you, and he's got the hot chick with him. Like, what's that chick with him for? He's like fucking 5'7". You know what I mean?
He must have a 27-inch long tongue. Jesus, can he lick his nostril?
Or like a big old dong on him, and that's gonna make him mad too. Like, not only are we mad because I'm taller than you, and you're telling me I'm a piece of shit, but you got a big old dong, and you're wandering around with Sonny. But so yeah, I'd agree with that list, and I'd put those. It was kind of like what we said about the best wrestler list. I'd put those guys in that order underneath Owen.
Mm-hmm. All right, the last category for 1995: most overpushed.
Mabel.
Agreed.
Hogan.
But Hogan could actually make money.
Yeah, but
people would be like, Hulk Hogan's in town? I'll go see that. But how many people ever said, hey, baby, you want to go to dinner? I don't know. Hulk Hogan's wrestling at the fucking fairgrounds. I want to rather go see that. But then somebody's like, oh, baby, you want to go to dinner? Sure. I just looked it up. Mabel will be here tomorrow.
Hear ye, servants and wenches.
Nobody has ever put money down to pay to see fucking Mabel wrestle.
Now you don't know that. Now there's
Notice.
Notice. No, hold on.
Now, hold on.
Nate is going to do a slice in time one time. He's going to be doing some indie results, and Mabel will be on one of the cards. And someone coughed up $20 in a gymnasium to see Mabel wrestle.
No, that's because Nikolai Volkov was on the card.
They coughed
or Tito, right?
Yeah, Tito. Tito versus Nikolai Volkov.
They coughed up $20 because they live in fucking Pawtucket or whatever, and nothing else is going on. They didn't go, oh, I don't know if I want to go to that wrestling show. I'm not going to spend my money. And then they're like, hey, Mabel will be here. They're like, what?
Let me tell you something. I'll tell you.
I wasn't going to give you money and concessions, but now that you told me Mabel is here.
Here's why Mabel is my pick. And here's why Aaron is right. That nobody ever plunked down any money to see Mabel. And this is not hating on Nelson Frazier.
He's part of the show.
Lower on the card. Exactly. Lower on the card, perfectly fine.
Right.
But here's why I say this. For every single main event star in the history of the WWF, heel or babyface, if you were in a championship match, if you were in a championship program, if you were a big star, at some point you had a shirt or a hat or a fucking underwear, something. The WWF slapped your name on some merchandise and said, people are going to buy this. There was never a fucking piece of Mabel merchandise. And he was in the main event of SummerSlam.
I think there was a mom shirt. I don't think there was a Mabel.
Well, I guess I'm talking about King Mabel, singles wrestler.
There was a Men on a Mission shirt.
Right.
There wasn't a King Mabel shirt.
Right.
Because they were like, this guy's so not over. We can't even merchandise a shirt. We can't put a King Mabel shirt out because we're going to lose money on it. Nobody's going to buy it. His mother won't even buy it.
And like I said,
so anyway,
I'm not hating on Nelson Frazier, Mabel, the man, okay? But Mabel is the big guy that you send out there, and everybody's like, oh my God, look at that fat motherfucker. That dude's fucking huge. You know what I mean? And he's like buried in like the third or middle match and working with Mo. And Mo, honestly, Mo was a pretty goddamn good worker. Like, I don't know much about him.
And you know he was in shape carrying that 500 pounds around for a long time.
And like I said, like Mo could like hit moonsaults and all that shit. Like Mo was a good worker and a good bump taker. But
I think Aaron's just saying Mabel because he has a personal feud with Oscar.
No, I have a funny Oscar story though. It's not
you and Oscar have a feud.
Yeah, I do.
It's well known here on the We Can't Wrestle podcast.
He was always mean mugging me. And I swear to God, he says feats. Like I told Nate that, like he was sitting there and he's like mean mugging me, and I was like, oh man, look at Oscar over there. He's like mean mugging me and shit, and he ain't doing nothing. And he wanted like autograph. Like if you want an autograph from Mo or Oscar, like $5, and like he just wrote it on fucking notebook paper with a pen. He didn't even try. And I think he heard me talking shit about him because he like mean mugged me the entire time. I was like, man, I bet that dude says feats because he didn't get up or anything. I bet he was like, I ain't doing nothing tonight. Got the diabetes and the gout, and my feet's hurt. But Oscar is also the subject of one of my favorite wrestling stories ever, and it's in Bret's book.
Okay.
Do you guys remember this story?
I do.
They were in Germany, okay? The WWF went to Germany, and Neidhart and Bret go into this bar, and it's like dudes in like leather jackets and like fucking metal music's going and everything like that, and they're looking around, and it's just a bunch of dudes and all this shit's going on, and they realize what they're in is a skinhead bar.
Oh God.
And Bret and Neidhart are fine. Big, burly white dudes. Everything's fine, you know. And they're having a good old time. They're like, we don't want to leave yet or whatever. And then Bret said, out in the distance, they see walking through the door, not knowing what he's walking into, is Oscar, who is not an athlete, just a little pudgy little black guy, walks in, and Bret's like, basically the music stopped, and everybody
the needle scratched on the record, and was like, "But you're wondering how I got here."
And Oscar was like, "Excuse me while I whip this out."
Well, no, Oscar was just like, "I'll take a beer," because he didn't turn right back up, but he knew exactly what he walked into. And Bret said Oscar walked right up to that bar, put his Deutschshire down, or whatever they call their fucking German money, ordered his fucking beer, chugged it, slammed it down on the bar, said, "Good evening, gentlemen," and turned around and walked back out. And Bret was like, at that night, at that time, Oscar was the toughest son of a bitch in wrestling, because he was like, I ain't gonna let him run me away. Fuck these bastards.
Amen.
And me and Jim were like, way to go, Oscar. That's my Oscar story. But yeah, Mabel, fucking he might be the most overpushed wrestler in history.
All right, Aaron and I said Mabel. Archie said Hogan. So let's end this show. Let's round it out and find out what the Torch readers said. 1995, most overpushed, number 3 of the Dungeon of Doom.
They put him as a whole thing.
Yeah.
Not a single wrestler.
Yes.
All of you.
All of you.
Oh, that's funny.
Number 2, Lex Luger.
Okay. Makes sense.
And number 1, Hulk Hogan. I disagree. I disagree on a fundamental business basis with their vote. I understand it's the smarky fans and it's Hulk Hogan and they have to shit on Hulk Hogan because that's what they do. Because they don't think in a business stance. They think in a, smarky stance. But I say Mabel because, and we have discussed it, for all the goofiness and the stupidness and the silliness of Hulk Hogan in 95 for WCW, why wouldn't they push Hulk Hogan?
When's the first year that WCW owned?
And that is when our connection failed. Yes, the internet failed us at the end of the show this week. We didn't get to finish our conversation, but we got through all of the awards, and I thought it was a great conversation about the Pro Wrestling Torch Awards from 1995. And thank you all for listening this week to the We Can't Wrestle podcast. And I would remind you before we sign off here, before I go off the air and head off into Christmas time, to check out all the other shows on the WrestleNet Radio Podcast Network, including Archie's show, If You Smell What the Arch is Cooking, which is our modern product show on the network, along with Mark Brew every single week, talking about the modern product in professional wrestling, along with Aaron's show, The Year That Was. Right now he is going through 1997. Myself and Slice of Time, talking about all the news and notes from 25 years ago in pro wrestling, and of course, Reliving the Extreme, where we discuss the history of ECW week to week with myself, Aaron, and Chad Austin. And one more. Let's talk about Maximum Gold. Wait, there's more. Maximum Gold with myself and David Gold, and the Asylum Wrestling Podcast. So there you go. So many shows to check out here on the WrestleNet Radio Podcast Network. And thank you for joining us this week for the We Can't Wrestle podcast. I'm tripping over my own tongue here. And thank you all, and have a great holiday season. Again, like I said at the beginning of the show, whatever holiday you celebrate, please enjoy it. Enjoy your family. Enjoy the time. And we will see you again after the new year here on the We Can't Wrestle podcast. The We Can't Wrestle podcast is a production of Maxin' Out Media, all rights reserved.